This is how Dricus du Plessis beats Khamzat Chimaev. Alright, here we are, exactly where we needed to be. Dricus just beat Sean in a fight where Sean put up a terrible performance. It felt like the whole time he was just on this feeling out process all the way up until the last round. I also want to make it clear that I'm not a Sean Strickland fan by any means. I have no idea where the fuck that came from. Anyways, this was the outcome that needed to happen because we all know what's next for the middleweight belt. Khamzat Chimaev. So okay, with everybody on board with this amazing fight, let's see how the betting underdog Dricus du Plessis can beat Khamzat Chimaev. Of course, before this breakdown begins, this is a series of videos where I go over how the betting underdog can get it done, and this doesn't necessarily mean I realistically have that underdog to win. As the fight is now getting close, let's detail a plan in which the betting underdog Dricus du Plessis can get it done. Alright, the first step in the game plan is pretty simple and straightforward, but of course, way easier said than done. To even have a chance to beat Khamzat, you somehow have to survive those first 2 rounds, especially that first. In Khamzat's 8 fights in the UFC, 6 of them were finishes, and 5 of those finishes happened in the first round, with the sole fight going past the first round being Khamzat's debut against John Phillips, where he was able to get the Darce early in the second. So essentially, if you make it past the first round, your chances of, at the very least, not getting finished go up exponentially, which of course makes perfect sense. Khamzat's style of exploding out the gate is not humanly possible or sustainable for even 2 rounds. Shooting with all your might and then dragging another big guy to the floor and chasing a finish takes all your energy, and I don't care how big, strong, or good you are, you will fade, and Khamzat is no different. So of course, for Dricus du Plessis, he has to expect the shot and has to play this balancing act of exerting enough energy to not get finished, but also has to reserve as much energy as possible to go into the third and subsequent championship rounds to beat Khamzat. And I think he has the tools to do so. Dricus du Plessis will be by far the biggest, the strongest, and the best guy Khamzat has faced. The guys Khamzat has faced at 185 were John Phillips, Gerald Meerschaert, Kamaru Usman, and Robert Whittaker. Off the bat, John Phillips and Gerald Meerschaert might have been big, but definitely not good. Kamaru Usman is good, great actually, but his fight against Khamzat Chimaev was his first fight in the UFC at 185, and him being one of the greatest at 170, Kamaru's size and maybe even his strength won't be comparable to what Dricus du Plessis will put up against Khamzat. And finally, we have Robert Whittaker, who is a legit 185er, obviously is really good, but I don't think he ever had the size and strength Dricus du Plessis has. Robert Whittaker has fought at 170, and in his fight against Dricus du Plessis, despite him being about similar height, Dricus du Plessis looked massive in comparison to Robert Whittaker, and the strength difference was shown here in this takedown and finish. So though Khamzat, to my surprise, actually has had half his fights at 185, I don't think he has ever fought someone comparable to the size, strength, and skill combination Dricus brings to the table. So with that being said, how can Dricus du Plessis use his abilities to survive those first 2 rounds and really that first round? Okay, it's obvious, but Khamzat is going to shoot. Not only that, but I think it's practically impossible to defend that first takedown as he explodes off that first takedown with all his might and strength, and as big and strong as DDP may be, I don't think he'll be good enough to defend that first one. I mean, shit, he couldn't defend a takedown against Robert Whittaker here, so defending a takedown from this monster is going to be 10 times harder. So I think instead of wasting time prepping to defend takedowns, if I were DDP's camp, I would put way more time and effort into defending submissions and either getting back up to the feet or turning a failed submission to a good position. Grapplers chase either one of 2 things, submission or position. Guys like Khamzat and Charles Oliveira chase submissions, of course, as shown by their many submissions in their resume. Though guys like Colby and Bilal choose to get the takedown and get a dominant position and lay there and maybe let go of some ground and pound, but usually don't actually get the submission or the finish in these positions. And though they don't finish the fight, the advantage here is that they reserve their energy and use it to continue to control their opponent. Because one of the risks you take when you chase a submission is that if you don't get the submission, you oftentimes lose the position and have practically little to no energy to get the position back or strike. Like here, Dustin, I wouldn't say had a great position, but at times when he continued to chase the guillotine, he had Khabib momentarily off of him where he could have wizarded in this position to get back up, but decided to continue the submission, which led to a failed attempt and practically zero energy to defend Khabib taking his back and submitting him. And even Khabib has said that that was all part of the game plan to let Dustin chase the submission to gas out and then lead to a good position and a submission of his own. Now this is obviously a lot different, Dricus du Plessis isn't Khabib, and Khamzat is certainly not Dustin. When Khamzat loses his position on the rear naked choke on Kamaru Usman here, even though he slid off of the position and was too high, Khamzat is so damn good, he still got back a dominant position with his legs and maintained the back. But even with all these challenges for Dricus du Plessis, I think defending Khamzat's submissions rather than exerting energy to defend the takedown is Dricus du Plessis' best bet, because I think defending that first takedown will be damn near impossible. And if he does manage to defend the submission and let Khamzat exert all of his energy trying to chase it, Dricus can either explode and get back on his feet or get dangerous and get a dominant position and stay on the ground with Khamzat. Either way, it's all about gassing out Khamzat and taking advantage of his finish in the first round and chase submission mentality. And Kamaru did it successfully, and whether the low output from Khamzat in the second and the third came from a broken hand or not, still doesn't mean he wasn't at least somewhat tired from doing all of this in the first. And defending Khamzat's submission, at least on paper, is actually going to be much simpler than you think. Now, simple doesn't necessarily mean easy, it just means that on paper, Khamzat Chimaev only has one route towards a submission, which is attacking the neck. Khamzat has literally only had submissions by attacking the neck. He has only darsed or rear naked choked his opponents even before the UFC. If he doesn't get that rear naked choke or darce, he doesn't transition, or at least I haven't seen him transition to an attack towards the arms or the legs. He literally tries to keep a dominant position on the back to try to attack the neck again. So for Dricus du Plessis, his game plan has to just straight up be Wu-Tang, protect the neck. And I assume he's doing it already since he trains a lot of strength and conditioning, but he has to be really goddamn strong, especially in the hand fighting here, to stop Khamzat's arms from getting around his neck. Okay, I don't know if this is silly or how feasible this is in the game plan, but honestly, I think Dricus du Plessis should build like a Pitbull-like, Volkanovski-like neck, just a giant neck and traps to stop Khamzat from getting that submission on his neck that easily. And I know Dricus du Plessis is celebrating and drinking beers right now, but if he starts shoulder shrugging with those kegs, I think he'll be one step ahead of Khamzat and survive that first round. Okay, say Dricus du Plessis survives that first round, now what? How does he go on to win the actual fight? I think a lot of people are going to point to the Khamzat-Gilbert Burns fight and be like, just make it a war and come out on top. But I wouldn't rely on Khamzat getting to a war like that Burns fight. Khamzat emotionally lost it in that fight and did not stick to the game plan, as shown by his coach screaming at him in the corner for him to stop, and also shown by his demeanor and disappointment after the fight. I think Khamzat immediately recognized that he needed to lock in and not do that next time, and judging by his fit and demeanor these days, he looks like someone who would counsel that younger, emotional version of Khamzat. This new Khamzat is calm and controlled, and though he'll still try to aggressively chase submissions in the first regardless, I think he won't get emotional and let his hands fly like the Burns fight. So if this does get to the second, and especially the third, I think DDP has to put on that pressure and be the one moving forward. Kamaru had a lot of success in the beginning of the third by simply moving forward, putting a lot of straight punches in Khamzat's face, and really being the one initiating the offense. And Burns had a ton of success in the middle of the second, where he was giving Khamzat a lot of volume with these strikes here. And really, fighters can respond to pressure by either waiting for a window of opportunity to counter or just waiting their turn. And Khamzat certainly just waits his turn. In those sequences, Khamzat really just backs up as much as possible with no intention to counter and waits his turn to reset and then attack. Khamzat is so offensively minded that I don't think he trains or has counters in his bag, or at the very least, we haven't seen it yet. And Dricus needs to take advantage of that. As soon as he sees Khamzat is content with staying on the feet, is content with a striking match, and maybe is slightly gassed from attacking a submission, Dricus needs to be unrelenting at keeping that pressure on him to keep him from not striking. And with Khamzat's tendency to just back up and not strike, I think Dricus du Plessis, with his weird talent of being able to kind of like run and jog forward while producing a lot of power, may catch Khamzat off guard with the way he can close distance really quickly and produce a lot of power on the move. And man, in perfect circumstances where Khamzat is gassed from attempting takedowns and submissions and Dricus du Plessis is all over him in the third or fourth, dare I say it, we honestly might see a finish coming from Dricus du Plessis. So anyways, what do you guys think about this pretty simple game plan? Granted that it's definitely simple but not necessarily easy, especially trying to implement that game plan against the monster in Khamzat Chimaev. How do you think Dricus du Plessis can pull it off? And ultimately, who do you have in this fight? Because it's essentially confirmed that Dricus du Plessis will defend his belt against Khamzat next. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this insane fight. But again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.